Welcome, friends, to Tanked Up, the podcast all about video games and beer. I'm one of your hosts, Ben, here with Aadil.
Hey!
Hey! It's episode 396. Let's open some beers. Aadil, what are you going to drink this evening?
I've got a Deya.
Nice.
It's the Standard DIPA Salts. DIPA everywhere, many drops to drink. It is 8%. It's vegan, and it doesn't like pregnant women.
Was it called Standard DIPA Salts?
Salts, yeah. Salts.
Okay.
But also, some kick-ass, weird...
Yeah. Oh.
can art.
Was he doing the sprinkle?
Yeah.
Yes. Sure.
He's
Right.
sprinkling the salt or something.
Mm-hmm.
This blue crocodile with sunglasses on, wearing a purple shirt, and having a very attentive, Cuphead-esque flower
Oh,
behind him.
nice. Yeah.
Also, it's got 0.98 kilograms of CO2 per liter.
Oh.
That's a thing I'm not really seeing.
No. You don't normally see CO2 information. That's interesting. That should be on everything,
Yeah.
surely.
I mean,
I wonder, are they a Deya like B Corp or anything like that? Have they got to start including information like that because they're registered as something, or they're trying to do something potentially in that sort of space? Maybe, I don't know. Interesting. Okay, cool. Good. I also have a dipper. I am drinking the Travel Rugs, which is an 8.4% dipper from Verdant and Overtone. Very subdued kind of can art. That's pretty much it. It does tell me it has got Motueka, Nelson Sauvin, and Strata in it. But that is it. Yeah, that really is it. So, 2 dippers for the evening. Following on from, no, Lucy didn't drink last week. It was the week before when Lucy had the putty, didn't she?
yes.
And last week yours was the 16-ish% gingerbread beer.
The gingerbread stout, the one that I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember how the last third of that podcast went. We talked about stuff, right?
We absolutely did, yeah. Things and stuff. That's what we covered. Good, yes. Continuing the trend of low to no alcohol January with big boy beers, and we've rolled straight into February again with our standard fare.
I actually bought a Northern Monk alcohol-free beer that I was gonna have today, but because I was saying before the podcast, I'm in a huge workload, marking time, and I was like, if I have a non-alcoholic, I can do some work afterwards, and then just sitting there, I'm like, I'm so burnt from today. It's like, I'm not going to anyways. And actually, what I should do whenever we stop recording is just go straight to bed and wake up early and have a productive Friday. So I'm not gonna. I'll have the zero alcohol 2 weeks from now because I'm gone next week.
You're gone next week. Yes. Interesting. Okay. I mean, yeah. I similarly.
It's already February, so I missed the January window for the non-alcoholics.
But again, I think it's got to a point where we're going to see non-alcohol beers just pushed all year round now.
Oh, yeah.
There might be a slightly bigger advertising element to it sort of during January. Maybe even, is it October as well? When there's is it Stoptober? I think that was more of a smoking thing, but people don't really smoke anymore. So I think that's moved across to other, substances as well. So yeah, potentially around then too. But yeah, I think it's just going to be a mainstay
Sober
now
October.
in bottle shops and sober October. Okay, good. Yeah, well, there we go. How's the Deya though? Talking of alcoholic beers.
Yeah, on the pour, I immediately got pineapple or mango and a bit of citrus.
Nice.
And it's a lovely tropical. Yeah, it's like super mango, with a slight tart nose, just rounding it out.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I fucking love Deya. That's a very good beer.
They're too good, aren't they? Really.
Oh, remember a couple of years ago, there was the first disappointment.
Yes.
Remember,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, and like followed by Lucy having a couple of them, and be like, something. I didn't never thought I'd say this, but like, I can no longer expect Deya to always knock it out of the park. Whatever that like low period is, it's definitely over because the last few Deyas I've had have just been standard knock it out of the park. Uh, this is really nice. It's got a lovely light bitter finish, a little resiny.
Okay.
But again, I would say more of that definitely orange citrus comes out in the taste. And especially like nearing the finish, you get so this like sweet orange, and then that slightly resinous but tart, sorry, not tart, but bitter finish. So it's like a nice pairing of a slightly sweet orange with a more bitter finish. But the body is still very much tropical. And that sweetness sort of plays through the tropical into the citrus really nicely. It's really, really satisfying. And this is last few weeks we've talked about like how like especially with things like sours and things like sometimes they taste really good but they don't taste like beer.
Sure.
And this is a beer.
Nice.
It's a beer from start to finish. It's great. It's got this lovely hazed up sort of straw gold, slightly orangey straw gold color. Poured with minimal head, but it's stuck around. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's super juicy, but it does start with that body of that mango tropicaliness.
Okay. Nice.
Very good. The one problem I would say is the taste, the time in which the main taste is there isn't that long, and the finish is good, but it also doesn't. The bitterness lingers, but like the parts that like I'm like, oh, neat, especially like the interplay between the bitterness and the sweetness on the finish that fades to just the bitter. So I'm just gonna keep reaching for this because I want to keep this is exactly the type of I'm gonna drink this quickly because it's making me, because it's not like, oh, I'm dried out, I feel parched. It's I want to chase that taste. I really like it. I want to have that hit of the taste again kind of as soon as possible, even though it does have a longer finish. I'm just probably gonna maybe it'll saturate my palate and I won't slam back this 8% when I'm already exhausted. But we'll see.
Yes, just see how it goes. Having already stuck my nose into this beer, I think I know how this one's going to go as well. It's lovely. It's lovely and sweet on this nose. Very similar in colour to your beer. Maybe not quite as gold. Maybe a little bit more sort of yellowy orange than sort of that kind of more slightly sort of bronzy kind of colour. But a solid block. There was a little bit of head when I poured, but not very much, and not very much has stuck around either. The nose is lovely. It's very sweet. I'm getting mostly sort of orange, but more like orange juice than orange squash. Like a big, like full orange smell. Oh, that's a smooth beer. That's very, very smooth. It is more like an edging towards that kind of slightly juicier kind of body to it and mouthfeel to it. It's very slick, it's very smooth, goes down very, very easily. Getting a lot of interesting. Initially, getting more of those kind of sweeter fruit notes the first time I sipped, but the second time, getting a bit more of an earthy element to it. Maybe sort of more of a mango in there than I first sort of thought. But this works very, very well. So you have this slightly more ripe mango or stone fruit, kind of tropical stone fruit in there. And then these sweeter notes kind of pepper themselves into it. So they kind of just start to appear a little bit. So a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of orange sweetness. Maybe there's a little bit of pineapple in there as well, something like that. But it's what was in there. Motueka, Nelson Sauvant, and Strata. So, interestingly, it's the Nelson Sauvant doing this then. So, it then kind of starts to get a little, not necessarily sour, but it's got that kind of vinous quality that kind of that Nelson Sauvin brings, but that you get with sort of, very kind of medium-bodied wines. Dry wine kind of will be like a harsher kind of vinous sort of feel to it, whereas something that's a little bit more kind of mid will not push that as much on this. And this beer does that kind of level of it. So there's definitely this sort of vinous, slightly bittering quality that comes in towards the end, but it's not too big. It flows very well from the flavour of the beer itself. And again, it's a little bit nutty towards that end. So that earthiness of that sort of stone fruit at the beginning kind of merges with that fruitiness and then just sweeps into this lovely kind of bittering and nutty sort of finish. It's very nice. I think I'm just going to have to just not talk. We'll just sit here in silence for sort of the next sort of 40 minutes and just sup our beers because they're just too good this week. Not unexpected from Verdant and Overtone. It's you kind of expect quality from Verdant, you expect quality from Overtone, so them coming together normally brings up a very, very good beer. And this is
neither of them are
one.
as common up here, unfortunately. So because the way you described it, I was like, maybe I'll just try and track this down. But
yeah,
easier done than said.
I can never remember where Overtone are. Where are they located? A quick Google. Well,
they should be then.
Overtone. Oh, they're Glasgow. Overtone in Glasgow.
Sorry, I said it quickly, maybe.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So yeah. So I mean, yeah, you're more in the middle of the two than kind of I am, I suppose. Almost.
Yeah, it's probably just like the places in town might not, their distributors or whatever.
They only stick to the west of the countries. They don't come over to the east at all. They just sweep up the coast, past Wales, and they're straight there into Glasgow. Let's enjoy these then. And as with our format for 2024, we'll jump into some news to start off with. We have briefly spoken about a trailer from the PlayStation State of Play from last night. Which one were we talking about? Stellar Blade.
Yeah.
Sounds like a 80s singer, but
Stellar Blade. Okay. So this is the one that jumped out at you, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I liked the State of Play. A lot of it was good. I think they put their time where they should do. But I hadn't really seen much about Stellar Blade. I think there was some chatter about it on Twitter maybe a couple of months ago, perhaps towards the end of last year, but nothing that I maybe actually have a look at it. And from the kind of extended trailer that they had, it was about a 5 or 6 minute kind of look at the game where they dove into sort of a few little story bits, what the game was kind of like, and then had a supercut kind of trailer on the end of that as well. And I think it just looks like that kind of early Platinum Games level of crazy. It's got that kind of Bayonetta movement to it. It's got that kind of like Vanquish sort of vibe to it. It's maybe not quite where Platinum have kind of moved in with Nier or Nier Automata, and I think it's probably not similar to kind of Platinum's sort of newer kind of output, but it's got that kind of just very cool, at least to me, very cool Japanese vibe to it.
Yes.
And it's very reminiscent of all of those kinds of early PlayStation kind of 1, 2 and 3 games that you just didn't get on any other consoles, because
that's very true.
They needed that hardware.
Go on.
I say you a lot of those were only on PlayStation because you needed the level of hardware that PlayStation gave you, but also it's a Japanese product, so they were going to have those kinds of developers producing games for it.
Yeah, so I just so it's made by Shift Up, who's Korean.
Right. Okay.
And then in 2020, they announced the game as their first project.
Wow. Okay.
And then in 2021, Sony Interactive Entertainment bought the marketing rights for the game and announced that they would be the publisher in 2022.
Right.
Yeah. So having said that, the guys who founded it worked on a game called Magna Carta, the series, and Blade and Souls I've heard of, but like, yeah. And then and then Project Eve was the name of the original game that was supposed to be a PS4 game and come out with for the Xbox as well.
Oh.
And Sony publishing, and it became not Sony exclusive. And then the final game, Stellar Blade, PS5. So that should be interesting, just because what I'm guessing then it won't do crazy things like Ratchet and Clank did, where like you need the interesting new stuff versus just be really pretty, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But again, that's not the type of game. It never struck me from the trailer or whatever you call that, the State of Play 6-minute thing. It didn't strike me they were doing like bonkers things with respect to what games can do, so much as, like you said, be sort of a Japanese style bonkers game where like the premise is something like you're part of some flight squadron and you're going to a society that's under the wasteland, and you're gonna go up to the wasteland and fight monsters and old robots.
Man, as with so many of these games, and I mean, it always kind of pulls me in because it is just so insane.
Yeah,
and it's just that kind of, I don't know where else you experience that kind of just absolutely inane, bonkers type of storytelling that can be really hard to follow, that just introduces just a multitude of characters who you see for 30 seconds, make a big deal out of characters and you never see them again. Just it's so over the top. And again, it's the same as those kinds of like stuff like Gravity Rush and things. Games I really, really like for just how absurd they actually are.
Yeah, I think so. On the fandom page for this, I just got so the description of Stellar Blade is like, oh, here's the gameplay, and it's like the game is divided into combat exploration, blah blah blah. Eve is capable of traversing and investigating the landscape through scaling walls, sliding, and climbing the ropes. The game also includes some role-playing elements. Eve acquires beta gauge through perfecting actions in combat segments, which can then be spent on new abilities or utilize them for a burst gauge. That's what you're talking about.
Yes, yeah.
This isn't supposed to be a generic description of the combat. It's like, oh yes, beta gauge, not defined, not explained, just beta gauge. But also, you don't have to use beta gauge. You could for unlocking things, you could always save it up for burst gauge. I'm like, yep.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. I look forward to just ridiculous systems that I'm far too old to master these days, and just will play on the lowest available difficulty, just to be able to experience the game rather than bashing my head constantly. Yeah.
And also, I don't suspect it's going to be short, right?
I mean, it would be nice if it's like, in the teens, early 20s in terms of sort of hours. That that could be fine. 16 hours is good, especially for an action game, rather than it might sort of lean more into those kind of East Asian sort of I suppose stylings for an action game, which kind of pull RPG elements into them and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know, it would be nice if it's not absolutely massive.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I would like that too, I think. Of course, there's a... God damn it, I hate Reddit. So I just was like, basically I was hoping, like, maybe they said something in an interview. Instead, when I looked up Stellar Blade length, I got a Reddit post of, the more I watch the videos that we have, the more I feel like Stellar Blade might be in the realm of a 16 to 20 hour game, if you consider that I've counted 12 unique locations, including the implication that areas may be explorable, and one location we haven't seen much of seems to be in the daytime. Yeah, you've counted 12 locations in the trailer and the couple trailers, so that must mean that it's a 16-hour game.
Yeah.
What a
Amazing.
people.
I mean, fine if they're correct.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I hope they're right. That's exactly what exactly what you said. I agreed with, but also that's not how this works.
No, not generally. Cool. So we were going to run through a little bit more of the state.
Yeah.
Of
So
play.
on the state of play, obviously Dave the Diver is coming, and that's a game I bought actually on the Boxing Day sale and just
nice.
haven't got around to on Steam. Did Death Stranding 2? You liked Death Stranding 1, right?
Yeah, I really like Death Stranding. Yeah.
Yeah. So did the what they covered for 2 sort of jump out at you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it did. I mean, again, if people don't like Death Stranding, I don't imagine they're going to want to play the second one. It is a very specific kind of game. It's not full of action. It's much more subdued in terms of what you're doing. It is like a walking simulator with puzzle elements, essentially, and a little bit of combat here and there. But it's mostly a kind of an odd delivery mechanism for, again, an absolutely bonkers story that makes one bit of sense and then 10 minutes of just fucking insanity. But it showed off sort of new characters. Some characters are back from the previous game. New looks to these characters and kind of evolving through the story with their sort of appearance, and some cool like robots that appeared as well. There's a moment where Sam is talking to Higgs, which is one of the bad guys from the first game, and who has a guitar that shoots lightning now, because of course, because Troy Baker plays guitar, so of course his character within Death Stranding has a guitar axe lightning fucking weapon. But he starts fighting some samurai robots. I'm like, this just looks fucking cool. Like, I don't need a game. Just give me this. Just give me an hour show and a weekly episodic show that's just this fucking level of insanity. But it's the kind of the quiet moments in Death Stranding which really work when you're actually walking across the landscape. And again, there's lots of big, lovely landscape shots with Sam just kind of walking through them in this. So I would imagine it's going to be more of the same with the game. But yeah, very, very happy that another one is coming. I've always thought Death Stranding was going to be like a one and done thing until kind of murmurings like last year, maybe the year before, when I think Norman Reedus kind of dropped that he was doing some more stuff with Kojima that was Death Stranding sort of related. So yeah, I'm happy. It looks good. It looks fucking fantastic as a product. Visually just absolutely stunning.
Yeah, great. Maybe I'll finally track. Well, now it's no longer on any. I'd have to pay for it to play the original, I think.
You might do. I wonder if it's come out. You go back to your like Epic Games library or something, and you potentially got it free at some point during a holiday sale, or when they do their sort of free games every week across the winter sort of breaks and stuff like that. So it's been free on a variety of different things. So you might find it somewhere in a library.
That's true. So, I've lost my list. Where's my list? And then apparently Kojima's making something that quote unquote blurs the lines between video games and film.
I mean, yeah, sure. He's been sort of saying that and trying to do this kind of hybrid kind of thing for ages, or wanting to do this hybrid kind of thing for ages. I know he's making this. I can't remember what it's called. He's making a game for Xbox, isn't he, with Jordan Peele?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, which is, I think, much more in the horror genre. What the fuck was that called? I don't remember. But they, Herman Holst, who kind of introduced Kojima, made a point about sort of, he's coming back to his kind of action espionage roots. Yeah. So whether he worked on Metal Gear for however many years, so leaning back into that kind of makes sense for PlayStation especially. absolutely bring a kind of a horror game with some big names attached over to Xbox. I think that's a really good place for it to be, especially through other games that are on your list. PlayStation are working with Konami, on Silent Hill game. Well, not working with, but it seems that there's that partnership between Konami and PlayStation on the new sort of Silent Hill 2 remake and the game that came out today as well. I think the Silent Hill something short something. I think whatever the other one's called, the other Silent Hill game.
Short Message.
Yes, thank you. Makes sense again for Kojima to lean back into those kinds of games. But, the message was very much like, this ain't coming out, we're not starting this until Death Stranding 2 is done. It's going to be the same team, I would think, doing Death Stranding that will move across to this game. So it might be a little bit of pre-production or something like that, but nothing massive.
So I mean, you're a reasonable Team Ninja fan, aren't you? Or you were at one point?
Yes.
So the Rise of the Ronin?
Yeah, Rise of the Ronin is an interesting looking game. It's kind of not... I don't know where it fits for PlayStation. It's kind of a bit... Ghost of Tsushima in its kind of sword play... Are you watching the trailer now? I can just hear it in the background here.
Sorry.
No, not at all. It kind of looks a little bit like Ghost of Tsushima. It's set in a slightly more modern day setting, so maybe turn of the century, or just before, sort of 10, 20 years beforehand.
Giant muskets.
There's these muskets. The kind of people from the US are already kind of over there, and they've already brought their sort of that period of time where Japan lost a bunch of its kind of culture through adopting lots of Western kind of ideals and stuff like that. So it's an interesting time period, very much. But then the Ronin character has a wingsuit, and it kind of feels a bit more, not necessarily Assassin's Creed, but kind of more maybe towards like Sekiro, something like that, where you have the chains be able to pull you kind of around, and there's that slightly more verticality to movement around the spaces and things like that. So
that's what people buy.
Oh, very much, yeah.
I'm saying that kind of tongue in cheek, because I think that is a thing that is marked as a trend, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that. So a lot more games are doing that. Like, the NDA is long over, and I don't think we ever touched on this, but the fucking Suicide Squad alpha that we both played, and it was like, the entire premise of that alpha was like, this game is about having one of 5 characters, all which have an excuse to do vertical like movements through, because Spider-Man sold and da 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 da. It's like, yes, it's fun, but also not every game has to do this, and like, I can see why, like, jumping around on rooftops is cool, but wingsuiting around. I don't know. The brief looks I looked at it like, this looked polished. And if the gameplay is great, it doesn't matter if I kind of don't care. But like, I that's a game where if the writing and the setting, if people are reporting, this is really cool, there's a neat story, blah blah blah, or even if it's just like the setting is doing a lot of work and the story is kind of hack, that's fine too. But like, otherwise, it's those types of, like, the visuals are neat, and like some of the sword combat might be, like you said, there's Sekiro, there's Ghost of Tsushima. Like, there's enough games that style of combat that alone wouldn't sell me, even though I trust Team Ninja for doing a good job, right? I would need like the game to be good.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And you sort of saying, I'm a Team Ninja sort of fan. I haven't actually played any of their more modern games. I played a lot of Ninja Gaiden.
Because I realized, like, it's 9 years ago when the podcast started, we talked about Team Ninja a couple times, right? Like, but since then,
yeah, I know. But like Neo, I played a touch of. Wolong, was that the game that came out last year? They did the Final Fantasy game.
That's right. Yeah.
the really recent Final Fantasy kind of action game, which is a remake of the first, but not uses the same characters. I don't even know. Strangers of something, I think.
Yes. Stranger Things, the Final Fantasy story.
Yes. Oh, Strangers of Paradise. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, I haven't played a lot of their more modern games, so I don't have anything to compare Rise of Ronin to in terms of kind of like feel of the game. I think I played like the Neo 2 demo 2, 3, 4 years ago now, perhaps. So yeah, it's a little bit kind of unknown still, let's say, but the trailer looked good.
I mean, I guess if I'm gonna, the list is short enough. Might as well hit every part, just if people didn't want to watch. Until Dawn has a shiny remaster.
Yeah,
it's a good game, but like I don't think it was sufficiently unpretty that you need to get the PS5 version.
No, I wonder if is this more because it's coming out on PC as well. So
yeah, that's probably so that's the thing where I might end up once it comes on sale, just because I have a PS4 somewhere. I mean, I haven't turned it on in a year, actually, I think. I think I turned it on when I first plugged it in when I moved here to make sure it worked.
And then just let it sit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Should really have sold it then. No one wants a PS4 now. I donated, I guess. So played Dragon's Dogma 2. I played a little bit of Dragon's Dogma 1 and really liked it. I really liked the mechanics and the flow of that game. I just didn't quite get gripped by the plot early on, which according to a lot of people, it really gets good. But I have also paid no attention to any of the information on 2. You watch the whole thing, so did that...
So it hasn't... Dragon's Dogma hasn't ever kind of grabbed me. You know, I like a fantasy epic. I don't know what it is about Dragon's Dogma that just hasn't sort of sunk its claws in. It looks very Monster Hunter. I don't know whether it's the same engine, but you know, that kind of obviously big monsters fighting big monsters and that sort of stuff kind of evokes that. It's Capcom as well, so it could very much be baked into the same either engine or shared kind of elements of kind of how they're built. But again, Monster Hunter's never been a game to grab me. I don't know whether it's just I guess because I was a bigger MMO kind of player years ago now. I've never kind of chased that kind of experience, I suppose. You know, when we've wanted to, we've played like Final Fantasy 14 and things like that instead. But you know, I think with something like Dragon's Dogma 2, unless it's free on a service, I'm probably not going to play it. I do have access to Dragon's Dogma because I think that game went through a bit of a refresh. I think the game released and people didn't like it very much, and they worked on it and patched it and changed things about it, and it came out as like Dragon's Dogma with a subtitle potentially. Again, this is years ago now. This must be like 10 odd years ago or something like that. But yeah, it's just never really kind of never appealed to me very much. And I think it is free on PlayStation Plus. I think I could go and play Dragon's Dogma, you know, today, but I don't have any want to really. So yeah, Dragon's Dogma 2 doesn't really do much for me at the moment.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, apparently, I've lost the spot where I was reading. They were why have I lost yeah, so the big thing about Dragon's Dogma is this, like, you have NPCs in your party who stay NPCs, and you like give them kind of modes of command, so like help, attack, blah blah, all these things, and then they completely do their thing. They're called pawns, and so that's still part of Dragon's Dogma 2. But apparently, where have I lost this? Should just use search. Apparently there's something about Grand Theft Auto 2 inspired gameplay. Or sorry, Grand Theft Auto 5. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so they've given more dialogue for the pawns, and they were inspired by GTA 5 while creating the world to get emergent gameplay. So it sounds like that's the thing that, like, I mean, the problem is GTA 5 it doesn't have an exceptionally larger, interesting, emergent gameplay compared to for San Andreas, really. But that does make me pause.
Yeah.
If the world is interesting, that'd be cool.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'm the same way. I played a little bit about because I think it was like on Games Pass or something, and it was like, oh, this is neat.
Yeah.
Same reason I didn't ever really finish either Divinity Original Sin or Original Sin 2.
Okay.
Had access to them at some point, and again, a big part is from the majority of the time this podcast has been around, I've not really been able. I've from PhD guilt and just being busy and stuff like the giant the bread and butter of what I used to love about video games was these giant epic RPGs. Just like I just haven't made the time or had the time or wanted to invest the time. Any combination of those, and this is just like I mean, you, Lauren, and Lucy are still angry at me for never doing The Witcher 3, right? Like,
so good, best game.
Yeah. Maybe 2024 will be the year of The Witcher 3.
Yeah.
But yeah. Speaking of remasters,
as a very slight aside, a little bit of related news. They are just about to start releasing. I think in March they're doing a short 5-series comic run of The Witcher, but a direct sequel to The Witcher 3. So where The Witcher 3 left off, this game this comic picks back up. So it's interesting, and it's done in conjunction with CD Projekt Red and stuff. So it's an actual extra kind of element to The Witcher 3 sort of story, which I think is for them to have, or for CD Projekt Red to be like, yeah, the Witcher stuff that's coming later on is not going to be Geralt. It's going to be something else. We're going to tell different stories and that sort of stuff. So to actually give people just this little extra, it's quite good. I like it. I like the idea of kind of experiencing a little bit more story or kind of delving back in, but in a slightly different kind of medium. Not needing, again, 80 hours to go through the next set of stuff.
Like, I think that's like for people who have the itch to see these characters again, that's the best. Like, do it in a different medium and like let the world grow and not be tethered to someone whose story is mostly told, or like like this is actually weirdly like if Tears of the Frozen Kingdom or whatever it was called, Tears of the Kingdom, right? Wasn't this is impossible because of the premise of the franchise, but actually by staying in Breath of the Wild's world, but being stuck with Link, it felt like DLC, and it felt like because there was a decent story. I mean, and there was emergent, like this was like more emergent gameplay with some hand wavy notion on why Link needs to do shit again, right? Like, but actually, I liked that world, and although it makes no sense for a Zelda game, that's the kind of thing that'd be neat. Is if you like parallel shifted to a different character with that world that everyone fell in love with, and then you can do still that character could come into new things, and that's where the new mechanics come from, right? But you aren't sort of tethered storytelling wise to the boundaries of that character, and like that's a lot of times where sequels get kind of because it's like either like then Spider-Man has to get hit by a gamma bomb so he can be Hulk Spider-Man, so that there's new gameplay elements, right? Like that kind of crap ends up happening where there's either like no reason or no innovation, right? It's some like ham-fisted thing. Anyway, I was just thinking like a neat world that has like tropes and development that you can go deeper in the lore without having like the main character have to be like, and now I'm going to do a historical deep dive.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I was going to say there's a remaster of Sonic Generations with new content featuring Shadow the Hedgehog. It's Sonic's Cross Shadow Generations.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just reading the thing.
I mean, it's
expecting nothing from you instead of what you did was like, yes, that is a thing I watched.
Yeah, it does seem ridiculous that we're recycling recycled Sonic games at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, did you ever play Generations?
No. I assumed again it is a reworking of the two, a cross between you've got the 2D Sonic, you've got the 3D Sonic, and it's just more of that. What was the one that came out? Sonic Mania? Was that the one that kind of rehashed a load of like levels from 1, 2, and 3, and kind of gave them a bit of a a graphical kind of boost and stuff like that came out 4 or 5 years ago-ish?
Yeah.
How does time work?
2017.
Oh, wow, really? Okay.
But you might be thinking, so that was the, 25th anniversary timed re-release.
Right.
Sort of homage-y thing. But then we had the Sonic game that actually felt like old school Sonic that was made by fans that then became a studio that then became an official Sonic game. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
No. Games. Let me just quickly look at the list of Sonic games.
All Sonic games. Thousands of them.
It's the... What am I thinking of? Or was it Mania?
Sonic Mania. When did that come out? I mean, it is 2017.
It is 2017. That part I got right. I just can't... Oh, no. Yeah, you're right. It's the same one. I confused it. Yeah, because it's the development team was composed of members known for their work in the fan game and ROM hacking community.
Oh.
And then they made a playable prototype, and that was shown to the Sonic team producer, and then they just got
hired,
absorbed. Yeah, because so Christian Taxman Whitehead made an engine called the Retro Engine, and he aimed for somewhere between the Genesis and the Saturn.
Okay.
Quality wise, and then that's what all of the Mania parts were put on that. But yeah, so Sonic Generations is not that. That comes from 6 years previously, and it's a 3DS game essentially. No, it's a PS3, Xbox 360 thing. And now it's gonna come out for PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series XS, and Switch and Windows. And it has a Shadow the Hedgehog campaign, I guess.
Yeah, some extra bits. Cool, fine.
So one of the ones I actually wanted to ask about, because I didn't get to look at the trailer, is Judas.
Okay.
Which is the Ken Levine game.
It's very Bioshock. Like, not... Okay, that's wrong. It's not very Bioshock. It's quite... I think it's almost Outer Wilds kind of adjacent. So how the Outer Wilds is to Fallout, I think Judas would be to Bioshock. Like it's the same. It's the same game with slightly different elements and a bit of a different color palette to it. Judas again is first person. It's shoots. It's powers. It's kind of not like leaning back into that 50s automata kind of vibe, but it's got a bit of that to it. It's in a space station, I think, this time. Sure, fine, but again, it's in a space station. You can still just put on whatever tone and aesthetic that Ken Levine really likes. So yeah, again, it's not one that did very much for me.
I think you mean Outer Worlds, not Wilds.
Oh yes, sorry, yes, you're absolutely right.
You threw me off, and I was like, wait, Outer Wilds?
Yeah, Wilds is the time travel-y one, isn't it? And Worlds is the Fallout.
The little gravity looper is what I call it. Yeah. I mean, that's what I wanted to hear. Someone who's played and enjoyed the Bioshock games and says, yeah, or woo, and you're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Rising.
Oh, V Rising. I really like V Rising. I've got it on Steam. It I think is a game which is much better as a multiplayer game. Which I assume it will happen on PlayStation as well. But as a single player experience, I didn't really like it a huge amount. Played a little bit with my brother, and it's a much better experience playing with someone else as well. But it is a vampire, almost like survival. It's a survival game, basically.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So what I was curious about it is it looks like a Diablo like survival game, and so like how so you've played it? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we probably talked about it in the past, but it's all a blur. How deep are the survival parts?
Oh God, when did I play it? A couple of years ago. Let's try and think back. How deep are the survival parts? So you have to go out and like drain people. You need blood. You can't go out during the day. There is a cycle. It has base building elements, so you can build your base, your castle, your kind of dungeon, whatever you want to hang out in during the day. There's crafting elements to it, but you do. How does it work exactly? I think you sleep and it slows down the need for blood. So if you're going to leave the game, you put your character like in a bed basically, and that slows down how much blood. So you can go away for like 12 hours and you're absolutely fine. Your character's not going to be depleted or whatever kind of thing. I would imagine by the time I go back onto it now, my character is very, very dead. So
but like dead or dead?
Yeah, dead. He's already dead, but he's very dead now. Yeah, it was. I liked it as a single player game in the first couple of hours until the open world asked a little bit too much of me. That just becomes much nicer, much better when you're playing with somebody else. You know, there was animals that I had to track which just didn't appear where they suggested they were going to, like all sorts of stuff that kind of, and I didn't delve too much into the nuance of why, you know, what I'm looking for wasn't there. You know, was it the time of day? Was it other factors that kind of didn't lead to it appearing? Yeah, it's one that I turned off from very, very quickly because I just didn't want to play it as a single player experience.
Fair enough. Yeah. It's good to know. I like this. I didn't quite. It passed me by, I guess.
I think it passed a lot of people by. I don't think it came out to much fanfare at all when it did. And again, this must be 2-3 years ago now.
2022, yeah, early 22 on early access in PC. So I'm guessing you probably had a code and it's long enough ago that I didn't.
No, I think I bought it. I think I bought it in a sale. Yeah.
Okay, so it must have been like a year and a half ago, probably. Came out of early access, bought it, something like that. Zenless Zone Zero is in development, and it's another Genshin Impact studio. Genshin Impact.
Fuck knows what that is.
The second one is on some sort of sci-fi train.
There's some shooty bits. There's some fighty bits.
Yeah.
Sure, it's like Genshin Impact, but sci-fi. Yeah.
I mean, I think they have a good strategy. I know some people who really liked the first chunk of Train game.
Yeah.
The second one, which I didn't. I think it was Christmas time where I learned that there was a second Genshin Impact. I liked the first 10-15 hours of Genshin Impact, and I think I just once I stopped playing, it was like, oh, this is a dopamine game, because none of the characters or none of the things really hooked me, such that once I stepped away, I was like, oh man, I want to learn the story of what impacted the Genshins.
Well, at least with this one, you'll know that there's no Zen. And
we know there's a
zero zone.
We know there's a zone with no Zen.
Yeah, yes. Okay.
But there could be zones with Zen.
But is it the first one? Is it is this zone? I just fuck knows. ZZ. They want to call the game ZZZ.
Zenless Zone Zero, but there could be Zenless Zone 1, Zenless Zone 2. But there could also be Zen Full Zones.
Yes, exactly.
My point,
exactly.
Right?
I think they just wanted to call the game.
Arguably, if there were no Zen Full Zones or Zen Light Zones, then there's no point in calling a zone Zenless.
That's true.
If everywhere is Zenless.
That's very true.
Don't you love hanging out with a logician?
Right. I think that's almost everything, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Metro Awakening, VR game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm glad they're doing something with Metro. It looks much more Metro than Exodus did. Everything that was shown for Awakening was in the Metro, at least, and underground and stuff like that. So
there was another VR game called Legendary Tales.
That looks great.
Yeah,
that looks great. You can grab a skeleton by the head and bash the shit out of it.
That's great. The last game, we're gonna skip. Whoops. We're gonna skip Foam Stars because no one cares. But Helldivers 2, we played Helldivers 1, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, and with Alex, we played a good amount of Helldivers. Helldivers 2 is as I don't know whether you ever played Risk of Rain 2.
Sorry?
Did you ever play Risk of Rain 2?
I did, yeah.
Because
I remember talking to you about it, talking on this podcast where it's like, this is such a departure from the first one.
Yeah, and I think Helldivers 2 is now a third-person shooting game rather than an isometric kind of strategy game. I imagine there's still strategy elements to Helldivers 2, but that change in perspective, I don't know whether, again, is it made for more modern audiences, for growing audiences? Are isometric games selling less than third-person games? Is that a market shift that they decided to change this? Did they just want to make a slightly different game, potentially? But it looks cool. But again, unless I had a dedicated group of people who wanted to play that game and we were going to sit down, not even every day, but an evening of a week to play Helldivers together, I'm probably never going to play Helldivers 2, which is fine.
That's kind of the. It reminds me of what is that persistent shooter from like 2015, 2016? Maybe it has a P in the name, starts with a P. But it was like one of the first consistent like MMO style worlds, but was a shooter. Anyway, it just reminds me of that sort of like the combat looks generic.
Sure.
And the world has some neat alien-y things, but like there are games.
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
I think that's basically the list. So you said that you were impressed by the state of play. So just a quick roundup, obviously Stellar Blade's your top pick. But what else are you like? So is there anything like you're super excited about, or are you just more excited like these are all a decent set of quality games that it seems like Sony's in the right direction?
I think it's kind of both, right? So we've got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth coming next month. There's another state of play next week, I think, which is going to give more information, or basically be that centered. Essentially, but opening up with Helldivers, going straight into sort of Stellar Blade and ending on kind of Death Stranding, with all of these sort of third-party games. Rise of the Ronin's not kind of third-party, is it? PlayStation published, but I think it's just it's a broad range of games. So it's just kind of like, cool, we're not just focusing on very specific kind of partnerships. We're not just showing you, okay, we did a little bit of Foam Stars and that is coming to PlayStation Plus, but this isn't like all Ubisoft games. This isn't all Konami games. It is a nice broad range of stuff coming out with a little bit of focus on the bigger titles, the ones that they know are slightly more system sellery, that they want to push that little bit more. So yeah, I think it was quite concise. It was like 40 minutes, something like that. Nothing really overstayed its welcome in terms of the games. Stuff like Dave the Diver, which has been out and is now coming to PlayStation. You had 30 seconds of that to say that it was coming to PlayStation now. It was a big hit last year on PC, so lots of people know what it is. I think it's more of a vehicle to say there's some Godzilla shit coming, really, rather than sort of anything more than this. The game's coming to PlayStation, which could be a set of tweets, realistically. But yeah, I think it's just a broad range of games, shows what's coming to PlayStation, and obviously to other stuff as well for some of these titles. Stellar Blade and Death Stranding 2 were the kind of the big picks, and good to see more of Death Stranding 2, but also good to just see something of Stellar Blade, because it was completely off my radar before I started the State of Play.
Yeah, good. Especially as someone who's just got a PS5, it's good to. It must feel nice to know that like you did the investment. Obviously, it's for generally your like PlayStation games, and you have PS Plus, so this whole library of games. But also that like the company is still heading in a direction that like interests you.
Very much, very very much. And as a I suppose as a small kind of snack before any of these things come out, another bit of news which came out today, I think, was that Spider-Man 2 is getting a few hour trial through the PS Plus trials element, which is great because I can play a little bit of that. I can, as I did with Ragnarok, I can start it and come back to it at some point whenever I pick that game up. Again, Spider-Man 2 is one of those games that I do absolutely want to play at some point. But more excitingly, Alan Wake 2 has also got a trial on PlayStation Plus. So I'm gonna, over the weekend, potentially be playing sort of 3-ish hours of Alan Wake 2 as well.
That's
which I know, it topped plenty of Game of the Year lists last year. It's one of the biggest kind of releases from last year. So to get to play kind of an extended demo of it is great, because everything I saw of Alan Wake 2, and having played Alan Wake for a little, I wasn't really that interested in it. I really like Remedy. I loved Control, so it's great to be able to play this
you never
sort of short experience.
Finished Alan Wake 1?
No, not at all. I've played
Me neither.
a few hours of Alan Wake. A couple of times. I think I played it, years ago on PC, and then I've played it on PlayStation as well, because it came to PS Plus last year, maybe. So I tried it again, and I think I lasted even less time playing it again than I did the first time I played it. So it'd be good to see how Remedy have changed Alan Wake after how successful Control was, I think. I'm very much looking forward to that. One final piece of news, which you raised on the Discord.
Yes, the modern capitalist hellscape that we live in has jumped its own shark, because a thing that I would literally 1,000% say that's a hard drive headline, and it's a bad one because it's too over the top. And so a game was announced their global release date on Twitter.
I love the name of this game.
Yeah, and also I need you to be clear, folks. I'm saying on the same tweet, they announced that the global version is dying. So the launch and cancellation of the global version of this game happened simultaneously in the same tweet. The game is Long Live School Idol Festival 2 Miracle Live. And I'm just going to read the tweet, right? Global launch notice. We're excited to break the news to you that the global version of Long Live School Idol Festival 2 Miracle Live is launching soon in February 2024. However, we also want to inform you that the global version will close its doors on May 31st, 2024, and cease in-app purchases accordingly. We appreciate the love and support you've shown, and we're committed to making these last few months an unforgettable moment.
Yeah.
Support, it's not out. It's outside of Japan. What?
I think it's more like that is insane in and of itself. But what I think is also insane is that the international version is going to have a store.
Oh, so just to be clear, it's actually just it's comically poorly written in the sense of the global version is launching sometime in February.
Yep.
And then they say the global version will close its door on May 31st. The reason why they're saying we appreciate the love and support is because the Japanese version is also closing its doors on March 31st.
Yes.
So, like, there is a semblance of thank you for supporting us because we're just fading away entirely. But it just reads as it's not even out. But I'm going to thank you for the months of support. I mean, months. You're defining it at maximal 2 months. But yes. So obviously the like why this started with me taking a jab at capitalism is you are keeping the App Store purchases in your game. You're launching it for 2 months.
Yeah.
And we know most people don't go to their mobile games Twitter presence to have a clue that when it's closing, because I've just seen it. It's a brand new game. It's a brand new listing on my non-Japanese App Store. Oh, we like this. I'm going to dump some money in because these games I like poke at for months on end.
Yes. And I'll come back to it, every month for the next 18 months. You won't.
The next 3 months is also a lie. Like that's how dumb this is. So they said in February, so we should actually look up whether it's out now. But if it's not, then it's literally not 2 months.
Was it February to May?
May 31st. I think it said March by accident, but yeah, May 31st. So it's like.
So you get maybe 3.5 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, and again, the key here is May 31st, 2024. The whole game shuts down, and like, there's a whole conversation on. What does it mean for having games that cannot be played outside of their online services? But yeah, the audacity of launching it in sometime in February, when end of May it's going to be gone, and charging people accordingly.
Yeah, corporations have to cooperate. It does seem crazy. It would be interesting to see if there is a big banner as soon as this game releases, or once it releases globally, and then it's added to the Japanese version. You go to the in-game store, and it very much comes up saying, "This game will shut down in 3 months' time." Any purchases you make are final, and you cannot get any of your money back.
That's not how this works.
It's not, but it absolutely should be. There should be some consumer protections that should exist, basically, to tell people about this in a very loud way, rather than, the game's not going to be bad anymore, and it's coming, but it's not here no more. But spend all the money, please. Spend all of your money. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I get, so one, obviously there's like some serious budget problems going on. Right? Otherwise, if it was going to be a positive thing in the books, you just run it for at least 6 months. But yeah, it's the audacity to follow through with the global launch. Because obviously, some people were complaining, they should strip the microtransactions out. It's like, no, that's dev time. I get that they can't do that, but the answer is cancel the fucking launch.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right?
How many units do they think they're actually going to sell?
So I actually think they'll probably make money on this, right? Because, like I said, you hit the App Store, you have the new game spike. There's already some people in Japan who like it. There are people who've been waiting for it to be not on Japanese stores. Some of those people won't know that it's getting canceled. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But also, like, people bought mobile games. What is it? I can't remember the name of. So Activision Blizzard / King, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So King is actually the majority of the money maker of that. Right. ABK. Yeah. Right. Because people just spend fuck tons of money on mobile games because microtransactions and the dopamine hit of the smartphone are huge. Right. So it's like, oh, I can easily see this making them some money. It's just the shadiest, like, most blatant money that, like, I'm saying this about mobile games and dopamine addiction and microtransactions, and somehow they've added a new angle that makes it, like, necessarily shadier, right?
Yeah, very much.
Yeah,
it's an odd situation. I don't think anyone would have ever seen this. Yeah. The world just gets more fucked, doesn't it? As more products get made. Yes. So that's what a lovely piece of news to finish on for everyone.
One thing. Yeah. Speaking of, just out of the state of play, you were saying you had gaming weekend plans. I'm surprised Silent Hill Short Message isn't on there.
I didn't.
It's free to play just on PS5.
It is free to play. Yeah, I don't know if it's just PS5, but it is free to play. It's not a game to play when there are children around.
Oh, fair enough.
And a lot of my gaming time, and again, maybe Alan Wake 2 isn't either. And actually, the game that I'm going to talk about in a moment isn't really. And I've been finding time to play outside of just having the kids kind of around in the lounge and stuff. But there's so many horror first-person experiences. Stuff like Outlast, those kinds of things. And none of them have ever really grabbed me that long. Again, what's it called? A short message? Who knows? Yep. It might be as it's free, I would imagine it is a short game as well. And it might lead into whatever they're doing next with Silent Hill.
I would assume.
But, nothing really grabbed me from the trailer.
Well,
2 hours. Okay. So, I mean, maybe if I've got 2 hours and Kim's not here because she would hate it.
Right. That's fair, yeah.
Yeah. So, opportunity is very limited on that. Excuse me, I just have to let the cat out of the room.
No worries.
But yes, opportunity is very limited.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's just, I guess...
There it goes.
I was thinking of the, PT Kojima short thing. But I can see how... I mean, I didn't watch the trailer, and, to be honest, nothing more modern Silent Hill-y has ever really grabbed me as much as, I still think the misstep of Silent Hill 2 remaster, getting rid of the fog of war because they didn't understand that their technical limitations gave the entirety of that atmosphere.
Absolutely.
There was so much of that atmosphere, and it was such a misstep. Nothing's sort of gone past that moment of really, and then everyone else confirming, yeah, it's not as good as just find a ROM.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, again, Konami will Konami. So we'll just see how they do, I guess. With it being sort of a stealth drop, and not having seen anything about it, doesn't always bode very well. Great, cool, you can go and play this game for free right now, but there's no reviews of it anywhere for you to, get any information up front about whether you want to actually spend those 2 hours with this game.
I think, definitely in our old age and life, etc. The old adage, time is money. The price of a free game. That's 2 hours,
absolutely,
right? And to a certain extent, I think that's one of the reasons why I was part of that not playing The Witcher 3 was the intimidation of ooh, do I have that much time to spend? Oh, what if I want to spend that much time?
Yeah.
Right. Everyone's telling me it's great. It's like a 40-hour game. I don't have 40 hours. I mean, the dumb part is, if I slowly played that game, it'd be done. Right. That's where that's a mental misstep. But I don't know. 2 hours for what I'm assuming is a very essentially, and it might be very good, fun experience, but it's essentially an ad to buy the next game, right?
Yeah, very much. I would think so.
I didn't even watch the minute and a half ad for this game. I'm not going to play a 2 hour ad for some other game.
Yeah. A game I have played, and a game I will, potentially talk about maybe a little bit more next week, is A Plague Tale Requiem. A Plague Tale Innocence was one of my favourite games a few years ago. It's a lovely. It's a brutal but very good experience, very good game. Requiem is, a direct sequel. It plays exactly the same as Innocence did. Amicia, the character that you play, is still looking after her brother Hugo, and they embark on a big adventure, as you kind of did in the first game, running away from the plague of rats, essentially, that Hugo is tied to. And the story revolves very much around getting Hugo to a place, or trying to help him, essentially, to overcome sort of the plague that he has. And it leans in quite nicely to the companion kind of mode of games, right? You and Hugo, and you control Amicia. She doesn't have very big attacks. Everything has to be much more subtle. You've got a slingshot, so you can only attack enemies who haven't got helmets on. You get a crossbow a bit later on as well, which is great. But everything is a bit more stealthy. You've got to plan. You've got to kind of make sure that enemies don't hear you using your sling, or notice that enemies have been sort of taken out. You can get overwhelmed very easily. The game, as it progresses through, leans more into Hugo understanding and being able to utilize the rats, and that is so incredibly satisfying. Like, commanding or becoming a plague of rats and moving around the environment, trying to take soldiers out of the path of the two of them so they can kind of progress through the world. It's kind of maybe not quite so far as heartfelt as the first game. I think, the first game, they're new characters. You don't know the relationship that builds kind of through the game. You can see sort of the love between them, how Amicia kind of looks after Hugo and stuff like that. This obviously just picks up from that. And so far, it's the story is very, very angry girl is still looking after her brother.
Right.
And sort of the potentially bad and poor decision making that comes with being blinded by this kind of adolescent rage that she has at both the situation and the people kind of around her and stuff. So I think it works very well. And it's written very well. It's just it's not quite as interesting, or as heartfelt, I think, as the first game. But solid gameplay. As Innocence was, and I'm really enjoying moving around the environments and working out how to strategically kind of get through a map with 10 enemies on, which basically, as soon as if I kill one, I'm gonna get fucking swamped. So you try and distract, you try and take them out silently. You do that slightly more stealthy kind of playthrough, and the game actually has an auto an auto upgrade element to it. So based upon how you move through and deal with enemies in a level, it will automatically upgrade one of 3 paths. So there's like an aggression path, a stealth path, and I think one which is called like an opportunist path, where you use like the natural environment around you to distract guards and that sort of stuff.
Oh, you don't sell them on monorail?
Absolutely not. So it kind
of just to clarify, I'm assuming that means you can it sort of upgrades you based on the style of play you do in that level.
Yes.
So if you want it to be more well-rounded, you don't get a choice. So in other games, you have skill points, and then you level up, and you're oh, I'm going to start being stealthy, and then I'm going to get my combat up, and then by the end of the game, I'm going to be a bit stealthy combat. In this, you earn the ability to be better at some part of the skill tree by doing the skill tree before that gets optimized.
Yeah, and I think it's trying...
That's neat. I like that.
It's trying to simplify the idea of kind of the progression of a character, right? Rather than giving you those decisions, it's you play the game like this. You're now better at doing that. Cool. I like
which is nice and organic, right? So if I succeed in sneaking around, I have figured out how to sneak around.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, and sneaking around gets easier because it's a proxy for I'm now more aware of sound, or when people get tripped up or triggered by something I do. That sounds really neat. And same thing with how do you learn how to fight well? Well, you fight, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
rather than the skill point thing where it's like I spent the first 5 levels being real sneaky, and now I'm really good at fucking punching someone in the throat because I earned the points by getting through the game.
Like, well, I'm already good at
but I
sneaking.
use them all over here.
Yeah. It's like, I know how to sneak. I can do that. Thank you. Let me, upgrade my sword 1 billion times. Now I just stab everybody with one stab. Yes, absolutely. It is very natural, and it fits really well with the game, and the idea that, again, you're a young girl, and you are learning kind of as you do these kinds of things. You're not an established veteran of war. You're not a ninja or kind of, some kind of person who has trained up to be stealthy. You are just a kid trying to move through the world, so becoming better, and obviously much more accelerated in the idea. But again, the upgrades aren't huge. So, the first upgrade, I think, on the stealth tree is you move a little bit quicker and slightly quieter. So the radius of sound around you shrinks a little bit, and you move slightly quicker. So you can just get through the areas a little bit swifter without people sort of seeing you as much. We can get a little bit closer to people, and so maybe you don't have to sweep around the outside of everybody. You can kind of zigzag around these sort of enemies that are kind of littering the kind of the level. So it does work very, very well, and that as I say, builds on the gameplay, and this is so fucking tight. But visually, audially, the audio is great. It looks fantastic.
Orally,
thank you. It looks great, and I think it's not let down necessarily by the story. I think that just isn't quite as good as the first game, let's say. So far. I'm about halfway through. One interesting point on this, I know I'm about halfway through because PlayStation do this thing called cards, where when you're playing a game and you press the PS button, rather than coming out to the home screen, it brings up a set of cards. And it does bring up a menu at the bottom as well. You can go to the home screen from that. But that set of cards tells you like the trophies that you've earned so far. It might tell you if other people are kind of playing the game. But it also brings up individual trophies and might say, do you want a walkthrough to understand how this to get this trophy? Do you want a walkthrough of this level? It tries to give you tips to help you to progress through the game. And one of these cards basically says that the trophy for completing the game is like the first thing that shows up, and it's like, you are 50%, 55% through this trophy. And like, well, so I'm 55% through the game then. Brilliant. So I know exactly how far through the game I am anytime I hit the PlayStation button on the pad, which is kind of all right, but also it sort of, you think you're getting somewhere within the story, and characters have like big moments and stuff. You're like, oh, I'm only a third of the way through the game. Okay, well, there's obviously lots more to come. Is something going to happen to this character? This kind of big moment that they've had, is that it? We kind of will never see them again. It's a bit of a it's just a bit too much information. Just sort of, it doesn't stymie my enjoyment of it, but every time I see it, I'm just sort of like, okay, fine. I know that I've got about another 4 hours with this game or something like that.
Right.
So it does pull you out of the experience a little bit. I don't know if I can turn that off. Potentially I can. I don't know whether cards are just a permanent kind of on thing. But yeah, I just thought it was an interesting point that the PlayStation kind of just foists upon you almost. So yeah, I'll probably talk about A Plague Tale Requiem a little more next week if I've finished it. If I haven't, I won't. But yes, that is pretty much everything the only thing I've actually got some time to play this week, and that was only because Kim was busy with her mum one evening, and I managed to sit in front of the PlayStation for like 3 hours and just bash out a big chunk of it. So yeah. I would imagine you've been a very, very busy boy, so I imagine you haven't got around to
there's a game on my radar I'm hoping to play in my like breaks between marking tomorrow. weekend.
Okay.
But this is how bad my week's going. I've just assumed it's Friday, even though we always record on Thursday.
To be fair, I thought it was Friday earlier as well. I almost wrote in an email, have a good weekend, even though I'm seeing them tomorrow. Yeah.
I mean, it's... So why I say that is because, one, like I have to actually... We got a coat. We have to do the thing. That's the mild contract we have. But two, like, I need breaks, and that's like playing a game for half an hour is a really good... Like, it's a lot easier to know to like force yourself to do a break, but not like get super otherwise distracted. Right? It's a lot easier for me, at least. I can like set a timer and play a game for half an hour and then feel like I had a break, and it's totally different from what I normally do versus like reading a book or going on the socials. And so yeah, my plan is to like decompress my brain with a puzzle game.
Nice. It seems perfect. Should we finish out on the beers then this week? How was the Deya?
Unsurprisingly, it's great. There might be salt in this, in the sense of like the aftertaste. Having finished it, let it linger for a little bit longer. I do have a bit of that, that salty, like a little slight aftertaste. I mean, it's just good. I mean, I started nursing it, so actually I'm going to revisit really quickly. Luckily, when my palate got a little more saturated by it, the finish sort of felt thicker and fuller, so like I was still getting... I still like probably 5 minutes since my last sip, because I'm out at the last sip. I'm still getting a bit of those mango notes, which it didn't feel like I was getting at the top of the episode. So this is going to stick with me for a bit more. It's got lovely legs. It's just a really good beer. And even though it's 8%, didn't taste like 8%, I would immediately buy another. Right?
Nice.
Like, yeah, this is like your very textbook sessionable 8%.
Interestingly, I feel exactly the same about this Verdant Overtone. I would instantly have... Well, I'd buy another one, but I'd have another one now. It's not that heavy of a beer. Whilst it is slightly more full-bodied, it's not too sort of cloying, it's not too chewy, it's not too big or too much of an alcoholic hit to kind of say you should only be, you should be sharing this beer. You should only really have one and then move on to something kind of, different. The flavors work really well. I think the flow started, as most beers do, the flow did start to get lost a little bit as the flavors kind of amalgamated slightly. But even then, it works very, very nicely as an overall sort of set of kind of flavors. Those tropical stone fruits, the sweetness, and that little kind of vinous quality to it, leading into that bitterness. It's a lovely beer, and I think it's Verdant, it's Overtone. We always have good beers from them, especially double IPAs. So you can kind of expect that quality with something like this, and I think this is a very good showcase. Again, because it's not too big, because it's not too much of a juice bomb, because it's not too much of that newer, or I say newer, it's been around for a couple of years, but that style of double IPA which leans more into the earthy kind of notes. It's neither of those. It sits somewhere kind of in the middle. I think this is a very good double IPA. If someone's like, I like IPAs, but I've always wanted to try a double IPA, this would be perfect. This would be like top quality, but you'd have to caveat it saying this is a very good, very easy double IPA to kind of get you started on that journey, but don't expect this level of quality with every double IPA that you have. So yeah, this is just a really good beer.
Great.
Yeah. So friends, if you've drank any really good double IPAs lately, you can let us know at Tanked Upcast on the socials. I'm at Nova_47, and Aadil is
at the Omniarch.
And you can see the beers that we have drank on our Out of Lives YouTube page or over at outoflives.net as well. if you're listening to us on your podcast service of choice, rate and review us because it's very, very helpful. Otherwise, hit one of us up. Go to the links on outoflives.net and come and join us in the Discord to talk to us about the beers that you're drinking and the games that you are playing. And from us this week, they are the beers that we have drank and the games that we, are looking forward to playing coming up.
Yeah.
Very specifically on only one console, potentially.
Which only one of us had.
Which you can come round and we can have a go whenever we ever have the opportunity to see each other in person ever again.
So once this marketing thing comes off, I have more flexibility in the term. I'm hoping to come to Bristol at least once this term.
Ooh.
I'm trying to. So with the stability, right, of the permanent job, one, it's also a paycheck now.
Yeah.
But comes the ability to plan around these things. So like I know I'm gonna be this distance from Bristol. I also know that I don't have to break myself or save in case I don't have a job in September, so I can budget. Like I've got a lot of people in Bristol, right? Like I can budget coming and visiting.
Yeah.
Once every couple months, or once every 4 months, or like a couple few times a year. I can do that now. This is one of the things that like taking a bit of time to figure out post permanent job. Like right, this is great. So yeah, like why don't I just do that?
Yeah. Absolutely. I was talking to Kim the other day and saying I need to go to Birmingham. And just basically being like, when can I just go to Birmingham? Trying to find out, so then let you know, and then me and you just appear on Lucy's doorstep, like, hello, we're here to see you for a weekend. But yes, we shall talk about that at some time. But thank you, everyone, this evening for joining us. We'll see you soon. We've been Tanked Up. Goodbye.
Go.
www.outoflives.net